Hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the My Generation podcast. Thank you all very much for tuning into the past few weeks of podcast content. It's been really just a great time bringing all this content to you. Welcome to another one of my Sunday evening, very casual shows where it's just me and you talking about what would either be on these episodes. It's usually either an anecdote from my life, a film review, or a hobbyist talk. And today's probably one of the more serious topics that I've discussed on the show in general. It's a very personal one to me, and one I've wanted to talk about for a long time on the show, and just wanted to make sure I've got the right way to communicate it across correctly in order to help anyone who is affected by this. As you'll have seen from the title of the podcast, I am talking about tinnitus, which is something that I've got in my right ear and have had since about March 2018. And I just wanted to, in this episode, talk about my journey, really from the start when it was extremely difficult, hard to focus, a very difficult place, moving to today where, at least for the last sort of year and a half, the tinnitus has been very under control. And still is to this day, and I would consider this a massive success in my life. And I want to let you know, listening to this, that it is possible to have tinnitus and still lead a very full life. It's not an end. It's something that you can have a positive outlook on that really gets you there. Now, firstly, I want to throw out the biggest thank yous for people who've helped me along this journey. Especially at that start point. Firstly, being Julian Hill. You can find him on YouTube just by searching his name. He was the person that I first saw YouTube videos of relating to this issue, and the way he handled tinnitus in such a positive light is incredible, and that was what influenced a lot of my change in mindset towards it. And I know that, especially if you're listening to this, if tinnitus is something that's just entered your life, and tinnitus can come in many shapes and forms. It can come from sort of loud noise exposure, it can come from jaw and ear infections, it can come from sort of blocked ears, it can come from stress on its own as well, which is rather interesting, because I think mine was more of a stress related one, as my to give you more context on my tinnitus personally, it's not affecting my hearing, so that's all still as normal. In fact, I've actually got above average hearing, but it's just in my right ear, and it's a sort of a higher pitch ringing, because tinnitus comes at many frequencies as well, and it can affect both ears or one ear. Mine's sort of a more unusual case for it just affecting one ear, but in what Julian discussed was the things that worked for him, and a lot of that's going to sort of bleed over to my podcast episode here talking with you. But there's also going to be some sort of unique tales from, my personal experience as it's been happening. So I just wanted to give you my insight to that, and hopefully help at least someone listening to this podcast, because it is something you can take a positive light to. So I wanted to sort of throw it back to the beginning when it first sort of came about, how I was feeling initially, and you may share some of these feelings, because at the start it can feel kind of scary when you're not sure if something like this is going to basically just stick with you forever. A lack of focus is a massive thing that I felt, and because tinnitus can be heightened by stress and lack of sleep, but at the same time, having the ringing in the ears can cause you stress and cause you to sleep less. It can feel like it's becoming quite a vicious cycle, but I can tell you it's very possible to break out of this, because when I learnt that a lot of what it is to do with tinnitus is sort of stress related, and the sort of loudness and awareness of it, that definitely helps, because tinnitus effectively is your ears over compensating for. They're sort of oversensitized, basically, and it's sort of a fight or flight response where, if you hear a lion running towards you and it's growling, you're going to sprint as fast as you can. Your body's going to be heightened up with stress. Tinnitus is that same sort of loud, abrupt sound in your ear that's going to cause a sort of a hypertension. But one easy way or thing that I did at the very start, when it was really difficult, was meditation. I tried 20 minutes every day for that 3-week period that it was first there. I should definitely be meditating more, I know that, but it was very important for me to stay on that for the first 3 weeks, and also to try some longer ones. So I tried a 60-minute meditation a couple of times after having tinnitus. So, they're called strong determination sits, where you sit for 1 hour cross-legged and you don't move at all for 60 minutes. First time I tried it was about sort of a month after I had tinnitus, and it didn't work. I made it about 32 minutes in and I just couldn't continue. But then I tried it again about 4 or 5 months later, and I did it perfectly. And that was a very fulfilling, relieving moment for me, knowing that I can sit with the tinnitus and be content. Because the way I sort of view tinnitus is it's like a one of those like Chinese finger traps, where like you've got it stuck over both of your fingers, if you can imagine them, what they look like. And when you pull harder, the trap sort of tightens and your fingers get more trapped. But if you sort of relax and loosen up and let go, then you slip out of the trap. And the reason I like to view it like this is because without the stress element, it can really help it to fall to the back of your mind. So even if there is, because it takes time initially to get rid of, and everyone else has different experiences. I had a friend who had tinnitus because I think like a really loud siren went off next to his ear, and his is fully gone completely. He went from really loud tinnitus in his ear to nothing very fast. So it goes at different speeds for different people, but sort of getting it to the back of your mind as much as possible is, and as hard as that can sound, it is really possible when it comes to that, what you focus on, and also the things you do. So meditation, other really good things that were suggested were swimming. I tried a lot of swimming. That was really great, because what swimming did for me was when you're actually under the water, you've just got the ambience of it, and you can't really hear sort of the tinnitus noise. It just feels really nice under there, and it gets your body moving, very active. Trying to keep as active as possible is really, really important for tinnitus. Having some sort of sport that you do. I did badminton for quite a long time. I'm a very keen cyclist at the moment. All that stuff that gets your body moving, gets you out of your head and into the physical world, is really, really important. Also, I like to personally, this one's more of a personal thing, is spend time in places with really nice ambience. Whether that be, I live quite close to a river, so walking along there or cycling along there, I hear the sound of the river. I've got the sound of the wind when I'm cycling. When I'm at university, there's quite a nice ambience around the campus. And when going out with friends of an evening, sort of that, I'm not sort of a big going out person. I prefer, sit around, have a chat with people. That's my kind of evening thing that I really enjoy. And going to sort of a place that's not too loud, but got enough ambience, like a liveliness to it, is quite nice for me. I quite like that kind of ambience. And trying to surround yourself with those sounds that are quite calming to you. So if any of the ones I've suggested aren't calming to you, maybe you're not a keen swimmer, maybe you don't enjoy cycling, maybe going out and being in those environments aren't good for you, maybe it's music. There are some albums that I listen to that are incredible for soothing sounds. There's a band, I really want to get up and find what this band is, who they sort of specialize in the science behind music that just sounds really nice and sort of pleasing on the ear. Yes, that's it. So I found the album. It is called, it's by the band How to Disappear Completely, Seraphim. It's a 2019 album, or Seraphim, I'm probably pronouncing that really wrong, but that album, it's basically designed around very calming, soothing sounds. It's an hour and 40-minute long album. It's available on YouTube. I'd really recommend supporting them. I love their work, and that's if I'm writing or I need some music, that's my go-to, which is terrible that I forgot the name of it, because it's with music you hear it all the time, but you just can't remember the name of the artist. So there are different sort of angles that work for different people, but finding quite relaxing settings. I also think that massages on sort of the neck area are really important for helping with tinnitus. All things that sort of seem like they aren't directly tackling the root cause are actually working towards it. Even things like improved diet. I've noticed that if I ever have like a slip with my diet, that's one of the first things that sort of spikes up, and so it's all things that are, which is why I think an issue like tinnitus is actually quite a global one, because, and sort of universal, because all of the things you need to fix or update in your life really are things that anyone can really do, and anyone can be involved in improving, because it's just sort of self-improvement stuff. It's about work-life balance. It's all you just have to sort of make the decision, and it's a really tough one, because when I was first struggling, those first 2 months, so sort of March till May 2018, were really difficult for the tinnitus, and I had to make a choice really, which was to either let this thing control me, or to go out and do the things I enjoy, and not become a victim to this. And it was quite loud initially. In my right ear, very loud. I've actually, the level of the noise has dropped so much, and I barely notice it now, which is incredible. A couple other things that have really helped. I'm sort of just basically going to be spitballing all the things that helped along the way. Really supportive family. Having, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be your biological family, depending on your situation, but having the people you're living with being very, very supportive, and knowing and being open to helping you in any way that you need throughout that, it's just so essential, and really was for me, that they knew what was causing it, what the sort of stress elements, and actually wanting to help. So I had a couple ear syringes as well, which helped, because I think my tinnitus was a combination of stress and a heavy build-up of earwax that had sort of been pressing on my ear. So when I sort of figured that out, go for the ear syringes, and that immediately sort of took basically like a weight out of my head. Everything just felt lighter, which was just incredible. And it's one of those things where when you're so comfortable in your body, or you're just sort of going along, you don't really notice the tension, and then when it's relieved, it's like, oh wow, okay, there's just this heavy weight lifted off of me, and that was an absolutely massive help. I think also I was in sort of a transitional period of my life where I was getting prepared to go to university after the summer, so I was in the process of meeting a lot of new people through summer and seeing if university was right for me, and there was a lot happening. And then once all that had settled, it was great. That summer, 2018, was probably one of my favourite summers of my life, because in and around the time I got the tinnitus, I made some of my closest friends, and we talked about it. I was very open with them, and there were other people I met who also had the same thing, and some of them had got it from like loud noise exposure. There were a couple people who'd been in bands who'd had it, and so able to talk about it and actually share stories was incredible. I did public speaking at the time as well, so I was able to get it out that way, but never in a way that felt like venting, because this was a thing that I had to tackle alone, because it's a very internal experience, and when 95% of the people aren't able to actually know what this feels like, you have to deal with this on your own. And when you're talking about it, I'm only trying now to, because the improvements have been so great, and I was lucky that summer was just so amazing. I'd met so many wonderful new people, and we just decided to do loads of great things. I met a lot of them through a social media app called Meetup. We discussed it on the very first episode of the podcast. Had to be the first one, because it was such a powerful episode for me, and such a powerful thing in my life. A lot of my favorite close friends I've met through Meetup and have stuck with me since I started using the app at the beginning of 2018. And what a story. When summer rolled around that year of 2018, it was the World Cup. It was boiling all the time. I was out all the time for work and for just having a great time. At the time, I was running a little murder mystery company as well, so I was earning a bit for the first time that was like away from a traditional job, and I was enjoying my time with my friends. It was just incredible, and I would recommend it. Just taking up ventures like that. It was just really fun, and I would go for bike rides really late, and because it was really nice and warm, there was just I was in like a t-shirt and shorts cycling in the pitch black. It was lovely. I would go out and see my friends in the evening, work all day, and a lot of my work ended up being sort of rooted for these evening murder mysteries, so I could go out and do a bit of work, hang out with some friends, have some fun, and being in that atmosphere just kept me going, and I wasn't really thinking about the tinnitus at all. I was doing a lot of playwriting, creating art. If you've got an art form, keep creating it, channel some of your experiences into that art form, in the same way that I'm hoping to with the podcast here, and hope to in the future with other mediums. I think it all sort of bleeds in a little bit in the end, but there's something quite satisfying about, you know, putting some of you into your work, even though also you want to take bits and pieces from the world around you, so it just doesn't become a biography, but having that nice mix of you and everything that you've experienced in the world around you was so pleasing for me, and it's only got better. I think dealing with the sort of sleepless nights at first, some of the other biggest turnarounds for me was having the window open, and it might sound subtle, but having a soft evening breeze coming through, because where I live sort of got a bit of a wind tunnel, so there is like a soft wind that comes through when you open the window, and having that, having the ear with the ringing pointing toward that, was really nice for me, because that sort of helped suppress that and helped bring in a comfortable sound. If that works for you, sure. If not, you can have music playing, especially if you sort of live on your own as well, because I live with my family, so it wasn't and isn't so easy to just sort of play music at that time of night, and especially with my room being like next to neighbours, you know, that worked really nicely for me. And it's just where you take your mind. I now don't think about it, and because I don't really think about it, even sort of the reason why partly it's taken me so long to address this on the podcast is not for any deep reason. It's just because it's been so good, the situation for the past year and a half. I haven't really been thinking about it, and so I haven't even thought to address it really. But it's something that takes time, and it's something that requires a lot of addressing, and a lot of change to help move in the right direction. But that change is so possible. It's not an impossible road that's going to take you forever to get to. Please check out all of Julian Hill's work. I don't know where I'd be today without, you know, sitting down and looking at his work. What an important person in my life. Also my physiotherapist Paul, when I was having back pain, he helped me with that, and I had quite severe back pain from like 15 to 18, and he gave me very targeted stretches to help with that, and I went back to some of those when I first got the tinnitus. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, but or sort of between that time, but the stretches still helped. Another very influential, and there's lots of people that have influenced my life, and they're just, you know, from a perspective I haven't really spoken about, and you know, two people that I don't even think, you know, would realize how much they've helped. And so if you've got any questions, please leave them below. I'm very open to speaking to people more about my experience personally. I'd like to just talk about a couple other practical steps. So one thing I think is quite a practical solution is having earplugs on you at all times, because especially some types of tinnitus, and mine was like this at the start. It's definitely not like this anymore, but at the start, it because your sound sort of receptors are oversensitized, sound can feel very uncomfortable when it's loud. And having earplugs on you all the time, especially sort of over-ear ones, are even better. But if you can only really just have sort of the little in-ear ones, then it's a good start. I have a pair of the in-ear ones on my keys all the time, and if I know that I'm going to a setting that will have loud noise, I will then take over-ear ones as well. And I do this for concerts, because I've never been to any sort of loud music event without ear protection. And I think partly, if you want to go to somewhere that you know is going to be loud, having earplugs on you immediately helps rest you, because you know you're going to be calm going into the situation. Whereas if you go and listen to the music and it's loud and you haven't got any ear protection, there's always that doubt in your mind that you could be doing damage, further damage, if there is any initial damage. And just by having earplugs on you all the time helps remove all of that worry. I think in summer 2018 I got my first set, and then I've just been sort of replenishing them. But they just sit in a little pod, and that pod attaches to my keys so that I don't actually have to worry, which is incredible. I was walking through town last summer in 2019, and what was really a standout moment for me is that they were doing some, basically there was one road that we had to walk down to get back towards, we were walking home, and we were walking down the street, but there was roadworks ahead, and there was sort of, if we were going to go around it, it was like a 20-minute diversion. There was a little path for pedestrians that you could walk down, so you could get down it, but it was so loud, so painfully loud. And I was walking with my family, and they, trying to cover their ears, block it out as much as possible. I just took out my earplugs, put them in, and I walked through without a care in the world. And it keeps you just calm all the time. A lot of what the methods here are about calming the mind and the body together, because once that's done, because tinnitus isn't something to wrestle with, it's something to dance with, it's something to not retaliate against, but work together with, because it's not an enemy. Everyone has tinnitus, just most people can't hear it, and yours has just come up to a hearable and audible level, is a way to view it as well. So it's not like it's a thing that's trying to attack you or attack your body or attack your mind. It is going to be okay. It will be better. If you need to get in touch with me or anyone else or any recommendations, please do speak to whoever you need to. As obviously, I want to reiterate that I am not a medical professional. So when it comes to this subject, I'll probably throw a disclaimer at the start as well, that all of this is my opinions, my experiences, things I've seen to work in me and others, and from what I've seen from Julian Hill and his recommendations, because of how much they helped. But yeah, I think that basically sums it up for this week's or Sunday Speakeasy episode of the podcast. Please do let me know what you think of this discussion in the comments, because even though this is a sort of hyper-specific issue to me, I would love to know what experiences you've had, because I, despite having tinnitus, love the medium of sound. I work in radio, I do this podcast, I'm a sound designer on film projects. This is going to be coming out a little bit after I've done this, but I'm now helping out on bigger sound productions than I've ever done, so I'm getting a lot more control within the sound design sphere. I'm buying microphones and working out how all the technical stuff works, really investing in the minute qualities of sound, which is why I'm so glad that my hearing is still 100%. And I'm focused on sounds all the time, but yet the ring in the right ear doesn't really ever affect me anymore. And I really hope that you're able to, if this is something you're dealing with, gain from this experience some techniques that may help you. Again, Julian Hill has some even more advanced stuff and goes into some of the stuff that I've mentioned in this in a lot more detail. He answers some really pressing questions. But please do get in touch with me in the comments below, and hopefully I'll be able to answer, because this is a type of discussion where if you feel like you need to have a talk before you sort of go into tackling the issue, then that's absolutely fine. I didn't want to talk about it initially in any facet, and what worked for me was hearing someone else talk about it. That may work for you, but you may be the type of person who needs a one-to-one conversation or a group discussion about this before you can get ready to tackle it head first, and or maybe to go and see a doctor or a professional, which is absolutely fine in whatever avenue you end up taking to do so. But yeah, that concludes this week's episode of the podcast. Once again, I'm not a doctor. These are not medical prescription results. These are just what's worked for me. And we'll speak with you on Thursday, because we have guests on the My Generation podcast every single Thursday from 6 p.m. And then on the Sundays, these sort of more relaxed speak shows with just me talking about a story, anecdote, movie review, or life moments and more. So if there are questions you've got for me about my life that you want me to cover in one of these Sunday evening episodes, then please let me know in the comments below. But on Thursday, we'll have a guest on the show. We'll also have Sammy with his music reviews. We'll have Harry with his film reviews. It's so great to have Harry coming into the show to do weekly film reviews here on the My Generation podcast, as well as local Kent music. So great that so many people are coming together to help make this show so full. And that's why I also quite like having these Sundays episodes, so that I can just speak as well, just because it's so great to, meet so many new guests and hear all their stories. And I like to sometimes waffle on and share my own as well. But please, get in touch if anything in this episode has affected you in any way, as I want to keep this conversation really going. It's something that I've talked about before in public speaking, and it's something that I've wanted to continue to talk about and my continuing journey. But as of where I'm sitting today, my tinnitus is not something that's affected me. It's the sound in my right ear has been going down consistently for the last 2 years nearly, it'll be over 2 years now, and the actual journey has taught me a lot about myself, and in a way I'm actually quite thankful for it, because it actually gave me a drive to make positive change in my life at a point where positive change was not something that I had been considering making. I was fairly comfortable, and then this came along and I knew I had to start making change, and as a result I just kicked into a whole new gear, and my whole life has kicked on since then. That moment almost marks the beginning of the life I'm leading today, and I'm very happy with the direction that life is going. So I know I'm trying to keep this as positive as possible, and I appreciate that situations going to be different for each and every person, but my perspective on this is a positive one designed around improvement, calmness, relaxation, awareness of the tinnitus, and a desire to improve yourself, which will have hand-in-hand results with the rest of your life, but also with this tinnitus. Thank you all very much for listening, and I'll tune in with you all on Thursday for the episode with the guest, here on the My Generation podcast.